What's up, guys? It's Dan. So, Crossy and I were having a conversation yesterday on the stream, and it made me think that this video is probably long overdue. But we were talking about the question of so often we get asked from newer, even intermediate level players, and they say, "What's the best fish, or what fish do I need to focus on um, to try and catch at some of these lakes?" I'm not level 30, I'm not level 25 even, although some of them are. What should I really try and focus to catch? And immediately, him and I both said the same thing. Brim, however you pronounce it, is the fish you really want to go after from a both an economical and an experience standpoint. Truthfully, part of the reason is that they don't bang up your gear too bad. The other part of the reason is they tend to be fish that are in a significant school or pocket where you can catch a bunch of them at once. And if you're in a spot that's hot for brim, it's not unheard of to get two or three trophies in, I wouldn't say an in-game day, but maybe 2 to 3 in-game days. So I wanted to talk a little bit about brim today and kind of go through some methods and techniques that I'd recommend as you're looking to target this fish. So you guys can see the biggest one that I've caught has been almost 5 kilos, which really, I mean, that's not too big, to be honest. I mean, they do get bigger, but on average, your trophies are probably about 4.5. And any fish that's over about 2 kilograms is going to give you not only a check mark, but probably give you a significant boost in money in comparison to anything over 1 kilogram or what have you. So as we look at the brim, we're going to talk about, kind of the baits that you want to use, the tackle, and then also some of the things to do with a fish that aren't necessarily big enough. Excuse me. So let's get into it. So as we look overall at some of the skills that you want to focus on if you're going to target brim, as you look at bottom fishing, probably early on you're going to focus on simple bottom rig. As you get later into the game, loop rig I think is one that's probably a little better because primarily you're going to get brim in a lot of moving bodies of water, like rivers, like in Volkov, for example. I think the loop rig is superior here. If you're at Kaori and you were looking for them, the simple bottom rig's okay there. In my opinion, it's significantly easier to catch them with a picker rod than it is a feeder rod. For whatever reason, I seem to catch more on my picker rod than I do on my feeder rod. Now, I don't know how mechanically that translates in the game because they're a little hush-hush about some of the differences. I mean, you can read it in the game, but I don't know that necessarily the in-game translation from sensitivity translates to the mechanics that you feel as a player of the game. So, if you have them, use a picker rod. If you don't have a picker rod, stick with your feeder rods. Eventually, you can look at possibly using a picker rod as your budget, changes, but it's not something you want to go out of your way to buy. You can catch them on a feeder rod just fine. So if we kind of we'll just go into the tackle shop here and give you an idea of some of the things you want to utilize to catch these. So typically what you're looking at as far as a hook setup would be, you want a decent hook. If you're a newer player, you aren't going to be able to spend as much. But some of the happy hooks value as you're starting off early is pretty good. About 12, 14 is probably where I'd recommend, but you can go up to as high as 10, I think. Even if you left the size 1 hook on there, it's not going to hurt you. You'll probably still catch fish, but I would say you want to be somewhere between 10 and 14 as you're looking to catch brim. Some guys go as high as 6. I see a lot of 8s out there, but especially when you're first starting, I'd say be between 10 and 14 is right around where you want to be. Lines, you don't need anything too heavy. Obviously, most of these fish are going to be between 5 at most and maybe 6 kilogram, so you don't need anything too big. If you can afford it, go with fluorocarbon. If you can, I would recommend using a fluorocarbon leader. So we'll kind of show you one of those real quick. The fluorocarbon leader that you really want to go for, I would say, would probably be 10 kilogram max. You don't need anything bigger than that. I'd say there's an argument could be made 6.4 would be good. It's going to make it a little little bit more difficult to drag some of those fish in with that size leader. So as far as the rods and reels, the picker rods, if we take a look at the picker rods, a couple of the things you'll notice, we'll just look at the Royal. The stiffness, sensitivities of 5 of 10, stiffness is 7 of 10, 5 of 10, 8 of 10, 5 of 10, 8 of 10. So if you look at a feeder rod for the Royal for the same thing, sensitivity 5 of 10, 8 of 10, there isn't a lot of difference. What I think is, as you look down at the difference between the picker rods and the feeder rods, I think generally speaking, the picker rods are more sensitive. This is one of the ones that I use, which is 11.5 load capacity. There's one here that's 6.5 load capacity, but this is the one that I use most often for them. And it does give you an additional bottom fishing skill, but primarily I'd say that if you're using this, it's pretty good. I think it's one of the better rods that you can get dollar per dollar until you move up to the Venetians. These are probably the best brim rods in the game. But we don't really need to spend a lot of time talking about this because by that time that you can buy them, it'll be very, very late game. So as you look at reels and what you want to use for a reel, you really don't need anything strong. So early on in the game, the Adriatica is a really good value, the 5,000 especially. There's been so many new reels that have been added to the game lately. You have a lot of different opportunities to find something that works well. Anything at even your spark that you start off with is strong enough, which is what makes fishing for them great. You don't need heavy tackle. But if you were at a 5.5 to 7.5 kilogram reel, that's pretty good. I use the Saber 40 on my Model 2. I think that's a really good setup for them. But it's ultimately, guys, you don't need anything strong, and that's the whole point of it. As you're looking at any of the sinkers that you need, in my opinion, these sinkers here don't seem to alert as many. I don't know. They don't seem to get bit more on these, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't know that that's true or not. It's so hard to tell as there's so many variables, but the flat sinkers are the same. I think I tend to get bit more here if you're just looking at a simple bottom rig. And if you're looking at the feeder rigs, the one that I'd recommend would just go ahead and be the mask mesh, and a 30 or a 20 is probably what you're going to use if you have a lighter setup, and then maybe up to a 40. So with all that being said, let's get to the baits and talk you through the baits that you want to utilize. So in my opinion, the red worm is probably the best bait that you can use for brim. Red worm is one of the best baits in the game, by the way. You can catch so many different fish on this, and you're typically what's biting on a red worm, if you even have lower level gear, until you get to Sura, they're not going to beat the hell out of you for the most part. There are some carp that will take them occasionally, but that's pretty rare. So red worm's a great bait for them. Maggot is another great bait. Right now, I think cockchafer larva, if you have high level bait harvesting skills and you're a higher level player, these I've caught a lot of brim on since the last patch, so that's one thing to consider. Castor I get them on occasionally, but probably not as much as maggots and red worms. Wheat seeds I do get some on, not as many as pearl barley. And then I'd say pea porridge is another very, very strong bait. If they're there, like if the brim are there, you typically can catch quite a few of them on pea porridge. So that's another one to consider. Going down through the rest of these, I mean, cottage cheese dough has worked for me at times, but at other times it doesn't seem to do well at all. And I wouldn't touch any of the rest of these guys for them. I don't get them on insects, so I can't really recommend any of those. And I don't remember ever catching a lot of them on boilies. At one point, I got some of them on the Old Pal bloodworms and redworms. That was a long time ago, though, and I haven't really tried since. So if you're looking at baits and you're a new player, I'd say stick to redworms, stick to maggots. If they're there, you usually... These are almost like the potatoes and cheese if you were targeting carp. If they're there, you're going to catch them on these. If you're not catching them on these, it's probably likely that the brim maybe aren't there. But you could also try, I'd say maybe try pea porridge, cottage cheese dough, and pearl barley next. And those all tend to be pretty good baits. So now that we've kind of gone through the baits, I'll walk you guys through we'll just go to, we'll take a walk over to Volkov, and I'll show you some of the better spots, as Volkov's a pretty good area for them. You can catch quite a bit of these on Old Berg. You can definitely catch them in Mosquito, the Winding River where we just were. But this is like the go-to spot for most people when they get to 18 and they're looking to level up and do it pretty quickly and consistently. But there's a lot of scary fish here, like the catfish that can beat you up, the salmon if you happen to hit one of those, the pike. So here's some of the spots you can try out without having to worry about some of those bigger fish. Because sometimes when you hit 18, you've got brand new gear and you're a little intimidated by wanting a fish. You don't want a fish to go out and ruin it. So right where we are right here is one of the best spots in the game for brim. You're going to cast out to this 3-meter hole, and if the fish are here, you'll probably have a hell of a day. A good way to tell if the fish are here is to go over and go to where it says select the channel. And if the pier has a ton of people on it, you'll know the spot's really good. If this has like 30, 40, something like that, you know that this spot's going off and it's really good for brim. So as we hop across, and we'll take the ferry here, I'll show you a couple other spots. This spot over here is one that is another one that typically can be really, really good. From a consistency standpoint, it can be one of the best spots in the game to make money if it's on. If it's not on, you still can do pretty well here, but you're going to catch other species that aren't necessarily just brim. You'll probably catch white brim, you may catch vimba, you may catch blue-eyed brim occasionally. But right here, you're basically setting up shop right on this rock, and you're going to cast pretty much straight out. But all throughout here, you can get a lot of different species. I mean, if you look at the records, we'll kind of go through a few. Blue brim can be caught there. You'll probably get some chubs whether you like it or not. Probably get some roach whether you like it or not. Some nace can be caught in here. Eyed for sure. Definitely the mussel species are in here. Silver brim. Occasionally Vendus, Vimba, definitely white brim, white-eyed brim. They're all typically caught in this spot. And you don't really have to worry about a big fish coming through here and beating you up. At night, I would probably take your night crawlers off if you're using night crawlers. But redworms and maggots are perfectly fine in here. And again, this is one of the best spots in the game to catch them. So without walking you guys all around the map, I'll just show you a few more. This spot right over here, all along this shoreline here, can catch quite a few of them. Same thing all the way up from 70 to 80, 100. So you could walk almost all the way up here to the whole bridge. Keep in mind, if you're throwing lures, if you're just using 2 feeder rods out here and you're throwing lures, there are salmon and pike that come in through here. So just be cognizant of that if you don't have the gear to fight them. But all the way up right in this corner here, right on this edge, I catch quite a few brim here. Again, you'll get a bycatch of white brim and some other species that can be smaller, but if the bigger ones are there, they pay pretty well. This spot's really good. This spot over here, I've had some luck with at time, but I definitely haven't had any lately. This little beach right here. As you walk down to this island, there's a few spots on here that seem to turn on or off, and they're very hit or miss, but the ones that I've showed you, for me, have been the most consistent. Occasionally I hear that people are fishing all on through this bank, and they're looking for brim, and occasionally you'll find them and they're really, really good, and then they'll just completely shut off, and there's none there anymore. So a good idea and a good strategy that I'd utilize would be to and you can do this for any species of fish, but go to the Russian forums. You can just type Russian fishing for Russian language forum and translate the page. Go to the forums, click on reservoirs, and go to Volkov. Usually you can see when somebody's catching something and doing pretty well. You can also target the species and just click brim and go in there and go to the last page. And the Russian community is really good about posting their data to share with the rest of the community. And it tends to be updated constantly. There's always people that are putting their nets on there, and there may be some stuff lost in translation, but you can get a general idea on what they're using to catch the fish and where they are. So with all that, thanks guys for watching. Hopefully that puts you on some more fish. Please let me know in the comments below if there's any other fish you want to see or any other guides you want us to do. And I'm going to link Crossy's channel because a lot of the information we share back and forth. So you'll see Crossy's Twitch channel in there. And I'm going to link his YouTube channel. Go give him a follow on YouTube, or subscribe to him on YouTube, rather. He's almost at 1,000, which would be a big step for him. And I'd really appreciate if you guys go out and support him. He's a great help to the community with a lot of information and helping new players. So with that, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.